Thank you and good morning. You know, when we received the news that we had not become a winner with the race to the top, or were even a finalist, I went through a grieving process, and then immediately, even as a student that takes the test, went back to see where did I need to improve, where did the state need to improve. But also, we need to reflect upon the really good things that we were cited for in the race to the top application. So I want to go through those, and I want to remind the public about that we do have some very, very strong foundation that we need to build upon before the governor gets into the things that we need to improve upon. So if you look at the four areas on the chart that is before you, certainly we were the birthplace of charter schools, and we received more points than even the winners did when you did the analysis. And we have done a lot of things. In fact, we're now cited as #1 in the nation for our charter school law and the kinds of improvements and things that we are doing to move charter schools forward in a positive way. We are going to be creating charter schools in the future that will continue to be very, very quality, high quality, and we hope to replicate those in the future. So we're doing some really strong work in that area. Then in our standards and assessment area, we were also cited for having very, very strong standards. In fact, you all are very much aware of the Common Core group that is going on at the national level with a number of states that are really developing a common set of standards in math and English language arts. Minnesota has been at the table bringing our experts there to assure that our Common Core standards at the national level will be reflective of what Minnesota has been doing over the past few years. So we need to be very proud of that work that has been going on all across the state. And it has been due very much to the teacher and higher education faculty that have been at the table with us developing those standards. And then our assessments also are being looked at all around the country as very state-of-the-art. As you know, we created a science test that is all computerized, that has a lot of interactive ability to really engage the students. And we're going to be doing the same thing with our mathematics and our English language arts. And so we're going to be at the table again with a consortium of states. So we'll be really looking at developing the best state-of-the-art tests as we go forward in the future. So we got high marks in those areas also. Then also, in the Great Teachers and Leaders section, we were cited for our Comm program as one of the only one of its kind in the nation, and that we need to use that as a foundation to build upon to really increase our effective teaching and teachers and principals in our state, and then use that as a model for across the nation. So we had some very strong marks there, but we need to ramp that up, and that was what the reviewers said. So we've got a good foundation, and we need to really move on that very boldly. And then finally, our science, technology, engineering, and math programs that we have created have really been recognized also all across the state and all across the nation. We have been very, very aggressive in that, and you can't go anywhere in the state of Minnesota and not ask a child, what does STEM mean? And he'll immediately, or she will immediately say, that means science, technology, engineering, and math. But beyond that, our high schools have retooled, and we are seeing so much competition in the area of science and mathematics and engineering types of programs and competitions for our children, and it is having an impact upon what is happening in our classrooms. So we have to remember that we have some really good, strong foundations here in Minnesota, and then we really need to take all of this to the next level if we are going to be a winner in Race to the Top.
Thank you, Alan. I know not all of you are immersed in the details of education policy, so I'll go through these relatively quickly, and if you want any more detailed information, you can call Bill Walsh, who's back here, who represents the Department of Education. He can get you more detailed information on any of the things I'm about to describe. But what the Race to the Top application has done is provide a dashboard for states to look at performance indicators, not in the context of political rhetoric or pointing fingers, but to say these are the established criteria that most people believe will advance the cause of education reform in the country going forward. How do you stack up? How do you measure up? Is your dashboard warning light flashing green that things are good, or is it flashing yellow that things may be in trouble or not where they need to be, or is it flashing red that there's system failure or a problem? And so, again, this doesn't need to be a matter of political rhetoric. You have decades of work by very prominent people who are on the cutting edge of education reform saying these are some of the most important dashboard indicators for your competitiveness for your state. How do you stack up? And so now we have the answer, and we see where Minnesota needs to improve. And the first one is we need a bill that allows alternative pathways into teaching, passed by the Minnesota legislature, and I will sign it into law as soon as it gets to my desk. This is something we have been asking for years. It is something that has stalled out in the legislative process. The Minnesota Senate passed a bill like this last year, and we thank them for that. I particularly want to single out Senator Terry Bonoff for her courage in stepping forward and saying this is an important bill that needs to get passed. It passed, and then it was killed, I guess, on its way to the floor. Unfortunately, it is being considered again this year, and we urge passionately and urgently urge the Minnesota legislature to pass this common sense piece of legislation. It is happening around the country. It's going to happen in Minnesota, as all these things are going to happen. The only question for Minnesota is, do you want to lead, or do you want to get dragged to this conclusion or be a laggard? We want to lead. And so please pass this bill this session. What it does in a nutshell is to say, if you have highly qualified, experienced, and credentialed people who are scientists, engineers, chemists, mathematicians, and others who would like to come into teaching after having that kind of experience, there's an accelerated pathway back into teaching without having to go back to college for 4 or 6 years if you've already got academic and career credentials. Or in the alternative, if you're in a program like Teach for America or the new Teachers program, and you are a gifted and talented person who wants to enter teaching but didn't go through the College of Education, there's an accelerated and alternative pathway for you into teaching. Why we need this and what it does is, first of all, it allows a different field of recruitment into teaching, which is very important. There's a whole agenda around the need to improve the recruitment of the types of folks who are coming into teaching. It also allows us to more strategically address shortages in key areas of teaching. The commissioner can tell you that the total number of people who graduated from colleges and universities who entered teachers in the physics area last year was approximately 6 people total. I'm not talking about 6 people in St. Paul or Minneapolis or Hopkins or Northfield. I'm talking about 6 people total who are available as new teachers in the area of physics. That is woefully inadequate. We have to have an ability to find people who have those kinds of backgrounds and fields, whether they be at 3M or Medtronics or coming out of another university that maybe didn't initially consider teaching, that were going to go into another field, and allow them to come into teaching at least for a while on an accelerated and expedited basis. This legislation will do this. Other states are on the move, have already passed this type of legislation, and we urgently and desperately need it in the state of Minnesota, and there's no good reason why it shouldn't pass. It is aggressively opposed by Education Minnesota, and I hope that they will soften their opposition and allow this bill to go forward. The next one is linking student achievement to teacher evaluation and principal evaluation and performance. In Minnesota, we have a nation-leading program called Comm. It was the first statewide performance pay system in the country. We're very proud of it. As the commissioner mentioned, it got very high marks by the reviewers, but it was an early entrant into this area, and now other states are being much more aggressive, much more bold, much more objective in how they're approaching these issues. The winners in round 1 had not just 5 or 10% of their evaluation linked to student performance, but as much as 35% mandatory student performance as a factor in evaluating teachers and staff. This is the way the country is moving. This is the way education reform is moving. Secretary Duncan understands that. Many states understand that and are embracing it. Comm is a great platform for this, but it needs to be much more aggressive and much more robust. And so we call upon the legislature to make that statewide and to make the evaluation component linked to student performance much more aggressive, namely at the 35% threshold, so we can be nation leading and compete with the other states who've caught us in that regard. Next is a definition of effective teachers and an effective teacher distribution system. There's an entire agenda around teacher recruitment, teacher preparation, teacher training, reforming the colleges of education, having entrance exams for people coming into the colleges of education, having exit exams that are rigorous and robust coming out of the colleges, making sure while people are at the colleges of education, they're not just learning methodology, but they're also having subject matter mastery. Once they get into the profession, that they are properly evaluated, that they have rigorous and robust professional development, and candidly, if they don't do well, there's an ability to get rid of them. Our systems in Minnesota are archaic. They are too soft in that regard, and that whole array of activities that I just described needs to be dramatically reformed. It is embodied in a piece of legislation that we proposed a few years ago called the Teacher Transformation Act. The legislature has not yet passed it. It's pending again this year, and we're asking that they pass that legislation. One component of that needs to be defining what an effective teacher is, making sure we have people living up to that standard, and then, importantly, getting effective teachers assigned to the most challenged and needed sites. Some districts have this ability because of local prerogative. Many do not. And so the idea where the leaders of school districts or the state cannot ask and direct our most talented, our most gifted, our most impactful teachers to serve in our most impactful sites is ridiculous. And what stands between that and happening currently is systems that are based on seniority bidding, seniority assignment, and so we allow seniority principles to stand in the way of the needs of children and the strategic needs of competitiveness and education in our state. It's untenable, it needs to change, and this would help our application.